All right, today's a little bit weird. Last week started off really good. There were several people that were here, which is awesome. I think that is absolutely great. Thank you very much for everybody that was able to make it. This week is going to be a little weird because I am going to be out of touch and I do not know when I'm going to have internet connection between now and next Thursday. And what I'm thinking is that I may. Oh, Alex, good, you're here. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hi. I've already started recording.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for showing up. I was just explaining that it's this week up until Thursday is kind of weird because I do not know when I will have internet connection.
Mm-hmm.
And um, so I may have to record class again next week at a weird time, or we may have to do it on Thursday night next week.
Okay.
And in that email I sent out to everybody 15 minutes ago, I said because we have no idea what's going on, that whoever did actually show up live would get extra credit for attendance.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
And you had said that you need to see about getting a kit mailed to you. I will. I'm gonna write them as soon as I get done with this class. I'm gonna write them tonight and ask about that.
Okay.
I know
Thank
I
you.
know that they're totally happy to do that out of state, and I don't think there should be any other restrictions to it. So I will find out.
Okay. Perfect.
So
Thank you. Because I need to get like uh mm, minimum 2 root canals. So that's what I'm dealing with right now. And that's I have so much on my plate having to process that and going to the dentist and staying in network and everything.
two root canals. I mean, that's twice as good as one.
No, I need 3 total, but the two that hurt the most is this one. And then I have to go later in the summer to get the last one. But right now, this is the main focus this side.
Well, that is not very pleasant.
No, not at all. I am exhausted. Very much
Well,
exhausted.
if it's okay with you, I would like to there's some things that I want to talk about, and I would like you if it's okay with you, just let me know if there's something else that you think we need to talk about this week too.
Okay.
Um, as regarding the root canals, if you're interested, I had some really serious chronic illness about 30 years ago, and I learned actually there were a lot of yogic pain management techniques.
Yes, please.
And so, excuse me,
Bless you.
after class, I'll stop recording and we can visit about that for just a second.
Thank you.
It's come in handy because I work with glass a lot, which I don't know. You when you do anything physical, uh, you always run the risk of injuring yourself. And when you injure yourself, sometimes the worst part about the discomfort of hurting yourself is when you start healing. That's when all the nerves actually start banging the worst. So,
Yeah.
anyway, okay. So, what I wanted to talk about tonight is I wanted to look at the service learning slash artist research again and just go over that again for everybody. And I wanted to talk about um, many people probably have noticed that anything that hasn't been turned in on time, I put a zero on. I want to talk about that, what that means, and how to fix it, because it is not that big of a deal. And then the third thing I want to talk about is I really want to talk for quite a while about this first project, what it entails, what we're doing, and everything like that. One thing, when I first started doing this about 6 years ago, working on this particular first module project, a lot of people just kind of slapped something together, and it was really sad. But each of these is supposed to take several hours to do, and all of you guys are professional artists, and so um, when working on any of these projects, I don't expect it to be masterwork stuff, but I do expect people who are professional artists to demonstrate they're professional artists by doing a good job. I don't think that's a bad thing to ask. And when I started asking that, one thing that I found out is almost immediately is people started doing really freakishly cool stuff. And we'll see some of those in the examples. But I mean, when you guys give yourselves permission to do stuff that you want to do, and adapt it to an assignment or whatever, more often than not, what turns out is really great. So I want everybody to know to think about that and lean in that direction. For this assignment, building the little house structure should take by itself about 7 to 8 hours. If you're taking 45 minutes, redo it. If you're printing something off the internet, folding and pasting it together and trying to do that, redo it. I want people to think about if you were actually building a little house for any sort of an art show, what would you want it to look like? And that's what I want you guys to build. All right, so for the first thing, and if I'm coughing and stuff like that, I'm sorry ahead of time. I'm just having some issues with hay fever that is metamorphosized into a cold, which is just really awesome. My wife went through it last week and she never complained or anything. And this week, I'm just whining every once in a while, and she is, petting my head and saying, I understand, I understand. It was hard for me too. But what she doesn't understand is, I mean, her pain threshold is like way up here, mine is down here. And so when she deals with stuff like this, the only time I can ever tell that she's uncomfortable is when she says, "Oh, I don't want to watch the next episode in this Korean drama. I've got to go to bed." And that's about as bad as it gets. For me, it's, "Oh, I want to die. I don't want to get out of bed." Anyway, so just sorry, male whining. Okay, I am gonna share my screen. Okay. All right, so you can see this. It's module 7A, artist research selection or service learning research. What has been really nice is several people have already turned this in, artist research or service learning. If you go to one of these, in any of them, and I'll show you, the behind the scenes kind of thing. I'm going to hit edit, but down here, we have a list of all the people that are responsible for whatever that assignment is. And so it's everybody in the class. And what's important about that is when you guys turn in the assignment that states whether or not you're going to do service learning or artist research, um, whichever one you're doing, I take you out of the pool for people that are responsible for the other one. So if you're doing artist research, I take your name off that list uh, for this, for the service learning options. Which means if you're doing artist research, for artist research, there's 3 assignments. For service learning, there's 4, but 2 of them are worth half as much. And so it's essentially the same, it is the same amount of work. And but you're not responsible for them. However, if you never declare and you leave it, by the end of the semester, if you haven't done any of these things, you get zeros on all of them, and you not only do that, but you get zeros on both of them because you never declared which one you're doing. And I don't want you to get zeros. So as you look at this, go to this, decide which one you want to do, service learning or artist research. And in this class, I predict we're going to get 3 or 4 people that want to do the service learning. And I don't know, there's some really cool projects that people have done for that. And if you're doing artist research, the first thing you got to do is pick your artist, and it has to be picked from this artist list. And several people have, and I'm going to go to this and share this really quick. The artist list is, we have about 75 artists, and these, when Jason started this program 6 years ago, 7 years ago now, all of these people were essentially dead white Europeans. And we thought, well, that does not reflect first reality, and it doesn't reflect the student body. I mean, because we got people from all over the freaking world. And so as you go through, we have picked out, I think from here we have somebody from Scotland, and I believe we have somebody from Brazil. And but we go through and we try as we go through to bring in people from around the world so that there's more and more um, of a cross selection of real actual human beings. So, you know, we have and the artists are some of these artists are really, really good, and the rest of them are just really good with only one really instead of two. But we have lots of different people. And so I want you guys to go through as you do this first assignment about this artist. You look up 12 of them, and what you're doing is thinking about what makes you you, your self-identifiers. Think about those. I talked about that earlier in the module. And go through these and look at the artists and see how they compare to you. You know, do they look like you? Do they look different than you? Are they from the same part of the world as you are, or are they from somewhere else? Are they about your same age, or are they younger or older? You know, and all those kinds of things. Um, I think it's important to be aware of those things, not to make them a priority as you look at other artists, but just to be aware of them, because you will find that there's artists that you really are fascinated with that are nothing at all like you. But whatever it is that they're doing, it resonates with you, and you can find a really powerful connection with them. For example, Jeff Koons, this is an example for me. Jeff Koons was a Wall Street financier. I mean, he was big in the financial markets in Wall Street. And he decided one day, oh, I'm just going to become an artist now. And he did a crash course in classical art, but he shifted all of his focus about art into that interface between creativity and marketing. You know, what's going, not marketing directly trying to sell things to people, but marketing aspects where you're paying attention to interests and demographics. And so when he creates his art, he will take classical ideas and forms and translate them into things today that really reflect things like mass media, social media, and just current uh, shallow marketing, you know, marketing capitalism. Like, what's the best or what is the current popular uh, aromas of the newest Crayola magic markers? You know, because they're always new flavors, so that kids can get excited about them. But he plays with those kinds of ideas. And a good example of that is he does these gigantic stainless steel balloon animals, but he does them, they are obviously balloon animals, but he sizes them and gives them stances so that they look like those European equestrian monuments, you know, like, you know, big champions on horses and stuff like that. And so there's this underlying um, sense of humor that I really find engaging with him. And he is, in my opinion, he's one of the guys that really has taken the torch of Andy Warhol, who did the same kind of thing. Andy Warhol took the standards of sacred depiction in the 14th, 15th century, like the icons and the saint portraits and things like that. And instead of drawing, painting saints, he painted contemporary icons that were contemporary to people, like Campbell Soup Can, Brillo Pad, Marilyn Monroe. And instead of using traditional oil paints and things like that, he shifted it to some of the cheapest way that people were printing their advertising, which was in this case silkscreen. And so Jeff Koons and Andy Warhol really do a good job. But out of all this list, some of my favorite artists are Elana Tsui. He is absolutely amazing. He takes garbage and makes it look astonishingly beautiful, beautiful and powerful. He started just by using metal lids for milk bottles. And his workshops have completely transformed neighborhoods because people are actually happy to go to work. And he's just been a force for good in Ghana, where he's out of. And some of the others, like Judith Scott, I love. Was deaf, and when she was born, she was taken away from her sister and family because they thought um, she would never be able to function as an adult in society. But it was long enough ago that her sister just had a vague memory. And it was like the real life Rayman movie. She had a vague memory of her sister disappearing. And when their parents finally died, Judith Scott's sister was able to locate Judith, pull her out of the government facility she was in, and put her into a beautiful group home where she actually felt like a human and was treated like a human being again. And Judith later was able to communicate that that was the happiest moment of her life and of anybody else's life either. But her artwork is just an incredible celebration of that idea of being conscious of a trapped world and being freed. And I love her stuff. And we can go through and I could talk about that for each of these artists. But so find somebody that is not like you. And another one of my very favorites is Sharon the Shot. Um, Even if you've already done this assignment and turned it in, find out who she is. She is absolutely, absolutely amazing. Just an incredible lady. Well, anyway, so for this assignment, what you're supposed to do is 12, you pick 12 artists, going through this, you put their name down, find the title of one of their works, and then a 5-word description of their work. And everybody who's done this so far has done a pretty good job. A couple people did not get the number 12. There needs to be 12 of them. And that's one from each of these 6 modules, and then 6 from this list of the remaining 38, I believe. So, right. Does that make sense about that one? Okay, excellent. Okay, so getting back here, right here again, we talked about the artist list. Artist research, I can understand that this is going to be a little bit confusing to some people. The department has told us that we need to do something that demonstrates, that gives you an opportunity to exercise your writing skills and to do research. And we got permission from them to do the service learning instead of the research. So the artist research is was originally for everybody. That's all. You didn't get a choice. But I found out about UVU is one of the top 5 universities in the country, if not the top, for connecting students with service opportunities that are directly linked to their life experience and their unique set of skills. And that's what I wanted everybody to uh, connect to. And so I talked to the department people about this, the artist research type of thing, and I reframed the assignments for service learning in such a way that it covers a lot of the same material that you cover in the process of doing the artist research. So you are looking up people to connect to. You are looking up the right things to say. You're coordinating all this kind of stuff. And so that's why you're going to do either the artist research or the service learning if you're interested in it. And I just um and I mentioned a couple of the projects to you, what people have done, like the skateboard. Did I mention about the sculptural chicken coop? Because a couple years ago, one of the young men, nobody he talked to got back. They would return his calls and then they would completely disappear. And it was getting to the end of the semester, and he was thinking, "Oh crap, do I have to go through and do all the artist research stuff now?" And I said, "Well, no, but if you may need to if you can't find something else to do. So just put your thinking hat on and start knocking on doors if you need to." And he actually found somebody in his neighborhood who was a retired military guy who was disabled, but he had chickens in his backyard. And this young UVU student connected with the neighborhood around where this guy lived, and he got a bunch of volunteers to help him, but he designed a sculptural chicken coop. And he said something like it was out of Game of Thrones or something like that. But he had the whole neighborhood come together and they built a sculptural chicken coop for this guy. He said it was great because it brought the entire neighborhood together. So that's another example that I thought was terrific. And of course, lessons for anything from the homeschool kids to uh, the charter schools to the retirement communities to even somebody last year did a series of training videos and she did classes for people who are in hospice care. And that was kind of interesting because the way she did it, the family could be with their loved one and help them with the project, the little projects. And when it was all done, it was more like this is a symbol of the connection we have as a family. And it turned out really, really nice. Really kind of a beautiful idea. Okay, and then this first do no harm. Uh, this is something to think about, and I include both these things. I talk about what artist research is, and all of you guys at some point are going to be doing stuff where you interface with the communities that you live in. And this is just something for particularly the service learning people to go through and read and just ask yourself these kinds of questions. Because yeah, anybody can go and set up chairs for a church meeting. That is service, but that's not what we're doing. Nobody else can do what only you can do. And in order to get there, it is really important. I want you guys to watch this video. It's really important to realize this video talks about specifically what is the second disaster. Okay, there's a disaster that happens. Thousands and thousands of people want to help. And because they don't bother coordinating, well, sometimes it's almost impossible. So I won't say that. They're unable to coordinate their help. And that makes it so that months after the original disaster, there's another disaster because nobody knows what to do with all the junk that people donated. And that video, Alex, have you seen the video? Okay. In that video, one of the things it talks about is, I believe it was Haiti, where they had a hurricane go through, destroy a whole bunch of stuff, and people from the state started sending just container loads of stuff for them. And there was absolutely no coordination. And so one of the people there said that there were everything from used tea bags to prom dresses that were sent, just random, willy-nilly. And it was so much junk that the people in the community that it was sent to ended up having to clear off a space on the beach, dump all the stuff on the beach, and then burn it. And it was just horrible. When I lived in Alabama, uh, one year we had 5 tornadoes in the town that I was in. And these 5 tornadoes went through, they did a lot of damage. Thankfully, not very many people were hurt. It was things like um, there was a jewelry store owner that was the anchor that owned the lot for a strip mall, and he took when he saw that the tornadoes were coming, he dumped all the stuff out of his huge safe and got everybody he could in that strip mall to cram into the safe with him, and they closed the door. And then I drove by the day after the storms left. The only thing standing above 12 inches on that lot was the safe. He saved like 15 people's lives, and people were doing this all the time. But when after that hit, a lot of folks were sending food and stuff like that, but they sent so much food, there wasn't room to refrigerate it, and more people got food poisoning because of the rotten food than had been injured with the 5 tornadoes. And so that video is really good because it talks about just being aware of that kind of stuff. And then what is really nice at UVU, we do have the service learning um, on campus. We have a service learning office that where they walk through. It's called the Social Impact Office, and if you go and meet with them, if you're interested in doing service learning, even if you're not, I would recommend meeting with them. But they have lists of hundreds and hundreds of people and organizations that are really excited to work with people from UVU. And before going there, think about what is your skill set. Are you a graphic designer? Are you a 2D designer? Are you a game designer? Are you what kind of stuff do you do? Are you going into art education? You know, be aware of that kind of stuff, what kind of skills that you have, uniquely yours. Then go in and see what kind of options there are and see what you want to do about it. So I think that it's an excellent place to go to. And then when you guys do this, if you are doing the artist research option, you'll just select one of the artists from that 75. It must be one of those 75 artists. It can't be an additional artist. One of the reasons I say that is those 75 we picked specifically because they work with multi-dimensional materials, multi-dimensional design. And if you think there's somebody else that you really want to do your research on that is not on that list, talk to me. But the answer will most likely be no. And this first assignment is you're going to declare who your artist is and put it into class discussion so everybody can see that you picked that artist and they don't do the same artist. Right. And if you're doing the service learning option, this one is where you are going through and listing the skills that you have uniquely yours and uh, kind of brainstorm who you can contact. And so that's what that one is about. And then down here, see, I haven't published this yet. I'll probably publish it while I'm on the road. But this gives you a couple more assignments where you move forward with that. Like if you're doing artist research, you do your annotated bibliography. I'll talk more about that later. And if you're doing service learning, this is where you start narrowing down who you're going to work with and what you want to do for your project. And then on 7C, this is if you're doing artist research, you're going to make a 5 to 8 minute PowerPoint presentation. You do not have to use your voice and you do not ever have to be on the video screen. I've had people where they've made and this is for this and other assignments too, where they've written out the entire script for it and then plugged it into an AI voice generator. And I think the best one is like last year, somebody did this with the voice of Elmer Fudd, and it was really awesome. It was great. And for service learning, this is where you actually do the project and then talk about what went right, what went wrong, and what you did to fix it, essentially. So that's what that is. And then on 7D, the final thoughts is whether you did research or service learning, you write a short opinion paper about this, 5 paragraph opinion paper, opinion essay on your artist research, or you can, if you want to, instead of writing, you can do a video where you talk about what you did for your service learning. So that's what that is. Now, does that make a lot of sense? Do you have any questions about that whole thing?
No, you pretty much answered the question that I had. I was gonna ask you for the artist research, we were gonna submit like something every week, but you said it's only 3 assignments, I believe.
There's 4 assignments total.
4.
First one on both is pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm sorry, there's 4 assignments for service learning, and then you were right, 3 for the artist research. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you answered my question because I was like, do I have to submit something every week? But now I'm seeing it's 3, so that's a lot easier for me.
Yeah, it works out to be about every 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, that
About.
works.
And that's what it is a pretty significant project. And my concern is if I dumped it on you for the last month of class, that's all anybody would work on, and you'd miss out on the art stuff. We have to have a writing component in this class,
Mm-hmm.
and that and the short essays you do for each module satisfy that requirement. But I'm not, I just think it would be evil to force you guys to do all of that at the same time.
Thank you for caring.
I don't know if it's caring so much as students always get better reviews when they're not burnt out.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. But yeah.
Now, I do want to, for whatever reason, there was one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I forgot to, and that is the zeros that show up on some people's screens. When you, I have written in the syllabus a specific way that I grade stuff, and I'm a lot more flexible because I realize you guys have your own lives. You know, you live life. That's why you're doing your online stuff. And so when we do this class, there is a certain amount of flexibility in the submission of assignments. So if it's not submitted on time, I'll usually wait a day or so before I grade everything. And whatever hasn't been turned in, I'll put a zero on with a note that says, please submit 4 points. That is to specifically to trigger Canvas to remind you that you had to turn it in. And you always have at least, without asking me anything, you have a 3-day grace period after the due date. And if you need any longer than that, let me know. It's not that big of a deal. So there is a lot of people have not turned in their attendance for last week, and I wanted to reiterate that. The attendance is every week for attendance, there's 5 things that you need to talk about from the that week's recorded discussion. And the first week it was 4 things from the discussion and one thing from the 6.5 minute video I wanted everybody to watch. And we'll talk about that again like next week. But that's a total of 5 things. So some people turned in 5 things about the discussion and one thing about that, so they got an extra point. That's fine. A couple people turned in like 3 or 4 things about the discussion, not nothing else. They didn't get the points. They got a couple points, but they didn't get all 5. There is no reason that you guys can't get all the points and get perfect scores on everything. So just go back and whether you come to this live or whether you watch it later, just write down 5 things that you picked up on during the discussion and submit it. I prefer you do that every week because I will answer your questions. I really would like you to do that every week, but I have had people that have tried to muddle through the class and realized they were behind on watching the videos and watch 3 or 4 or 5 in a week, and that's fine if you need to do that. But I try to do it so that these discussions support and answer questions for each of the module assignments, and that's why I'm asking people to watch them every week. Yes,
I have a question. So if we submit an assignment and we get like a score that we didn't like, are you okay if we resubmit for a higher grade, or is that just the final grade?
it is never the final grade unless you give up on it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay? And that, like, a couple people have turned in quizzes where they missed a couple points. They didn't answer they didn't find the right spot in the textbook to answer questions. And I just left the little notes on there, and you can retake the quiz. You can retake the quiz 17 times if you want to. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can. And sometimes it's comforting just knowing that you can. But you can retake the quiz and get those missed questions corrected. Last semester, for whatever reason, there was somebody who I told them that several times, and they kept missing the same 3 questions over and over and over again. Look at in the little dialog box for the assignment and see which questions I talk about. And so when you retake the quiz, answer everything the exact same and then just change those 3 questions. And that helps quite a bit. Some of the things are there are 9 ways of involving the viewer that are listed. I believe it's chapter 1. I can't remember what the page number, but it is a subsection that is titled something original like ways of involving the viewer. But each of the 9 ways are in bold type at the beginning of a 3 to 5 paragraph section of it. And just so you just go there and plug in each of those 9. Or actually, I asked for 5 of those 9 and why they're interesting to you. So just plug in 5 of those 9 and describe why they're interesting to you. And that is how hard the quizzes are, basically. Or French's sculpture of Abraham Lincoln. Why was it important that to him that the lighting was the way he designed it? Those kinds of questions. And any of the assignments, if you get like 15 out of 25 points, I will always say why you didn't get the full points. And I expect you to change it and resubmit so you can get the full points. Because we're not talking to anybody, face to face, I can't stand over Alex's shoulder and tell her that these are all bad choices, that it looks terrible. The only way I can do that is by looking at your piece and say, I'm sorry, Alex, I really like you as a person, but this sucks, and explain why. That'd be horrible. I'm not going to do that. But I may say things like, I really like the direction this is going, but it doesn't activate space and the volume around it. So there needs to be something like attach more modules to the side so it activates the space all the way around it. This looks too vertical. Or I may say, um, this is great, but there's really not a balance of structure and structural support and skin. I think you need to add about 20% more skin, add more different things like that. Or this one isn't sanded completely. Um, you'll get the rest of the points after you sand it all the way, take another picture and resubmit it. So those we need to have that back and forth. And that's why also, as long as you are working on stuff, you can keep doing that, resubmitting and working on stuff and resubmitting it up to the last day of finals, to make sure that you get a perfect score on everything. And I don't know, this is an online class. I think that's fair because I'd be doing this with you in person otherwise. And since I can't be with you in person, this is the best I can do. So, all right. So I think I talked about all that kind of stuff. So if you are missing points, like if you're missing discussion points or whatever, go back, fix it, resubmit, take care of it. Okay. And for the discussions, though, I have asked people to email me because the discussions on assignments, when you resubmit an assignment, Canvas automatically is triggered to send me an update, but I don't see those if they're discussions. And so if you are responding to me in a discussion or you are resubmitting something in a discussion for more points, you'll have to email me through the Canvas email or university email so that I know. And
I
if
have
if it's if it's a couple days and I haven't updated the grade after you resubmitted, just email me and let me know. Okay. Sorry,
sorry.
Alex.
Yeah, I had one more question for you, and I couldn't remember which one was easier. Do you respond to Canvas emails quicker or Teams messages?
Um, I I don't really deal with the Teams messages very much.
Okay.
So it's either the Canvas email or university email. And in the
Okay.
syllabus, I also give you my text number, my cell number. If you
Okay.
guys absolutely positively have to connect with me right away,
Hmm.
send a text. And when you email me or text me, just say, "Hey, this is so and so from your 11:30 class, and I have a question about this assignment."
Okay.
Mind me. I have to say that because I have had over the years students say, I'm really upset about this, and I just with no context, I have no idea who they are or what they're upset about. So, but yeah, so I think the fastest response you're going to get, especially since I'm on the road for the next week, is going to be texting me in the cell over the cell phone, over the cell
Okay.
number.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
sure thing. And since this is being recorded, I will give you my cell number again right now. My cell number is 801-367-4893. That's 801-367-4893. So, all right, now we're going to spend the rest of the time gabbling about this module one. And this setup is about the same. There's a little bit more in this first module just to kind of let you know all the modules are kind of following the same routine. Um, we do have artist reviews and research in each module, and that's related directly to the module. that is not related to your artist research project. Your artist research project is you're going to be doing 3 assignments on the exact same artist. You're going to pick your artist. You're going to do a, an annotated bibliography about the artist. You're going to do a PowerPoint presentation about the artist, that same artist that you picked. And at the very end of the term, you're going to do a 5 paragraph opinion essay about that artist and what you learned. And that's so it's all about the same artist. But in each module, as you saw in that artist list of stuff, each module has from 5 to 8 different artists specifically for selected for that module. And part of the module is going through and looking at their work. I've labeled it background so it's not so confusing. I used to have it be, for artist research, and people got confused. I tried to change the names on all that. But what you're going to be doing is going through and looking at each of those artists and the work that they do. You're going to be writing an essay that is just a way for you to connect with and express and reflect on what you saw with those artists. And then you're going to move into the actual project that you're making. So, and this kind of gives a little bit of a rundown for the whole thing, this introduction. And the reading, not every module has a reading. I realized the reading was pretty much concise in the name of the quiz and the title for the quiz. And this is a quiz for chapters 1 and 2. And this is the quiz, and we can preview it. I have revamped the quiz and try to update all the photos in it so that all the photos are current. If you cannot see the photos, let me know. I don't know if there's any, yeah, there's some photos in this one. So go through, and each of these answers are definitely in chapters 1 and 2 of the textbook. Some are true, and we have lots of different, some are true and false, but there's a lot of different ones to go through. And like I said, all that info is in the quiz, or in the textbook. And you can go to the library if you're there, or you can call the Fulton Library and have them email you scanned chapters. Like Alex, since you're not going to be able to drive down, that may be a good way for you to get a hold of the chapters if you haven't ordered your own textbook already. Okay, so I think it's chapter 1 really talks about what's the difference between fine arts and applied arts, and use that answer. And extremes of material choice, people have picked materials like steel and sand and things like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what kinds of things are being done. And the two extremes are explained, I believe it's in chapter 2. So if you don't get this right, and I say please clarify, just go back, look for that phrase, extremes of material choice in the chapter, and then find out what it says about it around that phrase. This is the Abraham Lincoln image we talked about. This is a really good example of how photography is integral to the sculpture experience, which is what this whole module is about. So, take the quiz. You can take it, like I said, 17 times. Actually, you could take it more than that if you really, really want to. I don't have an upper limit on it. But so that each of these modules will have background section, and the background section is where I give you several different artists. And these artists are important because they're the ones that you're going to be talking about in the essay that you write, the reflection essay that you write for this module. Each reflection essay, you have to use the artists that are in the same module that the reflection essay is, that module's reflection essay is in. And I have to clarify that I thought it was pretty self-explanatory, but I've had people pull artists from the textbook, which you're not supposed to do. So when you do the reflection essay for this module, you pick from Polly Becker, Isaac Cordell, Slinkachu, Thomas Allen, let's see, James K. Sabir, Alejandro Laviata, Sandy Skoglund, or Andy Goldsworthy. Those are the artists that you pick from. And then the next assignment should be artist review. In this case, there's 3 paragraphs. Each paragraph, I give you a very specific thing for you to talk about the artist. Describe what you learned from looking at this group of artists. So you talk about all 8 of them. And not, you don't have to mention them by name, but you can say, one thing that I see looking at all these artists is. Second paragraph, articulate which artist's work you like the most and why. Which of those artists do you respond to? And then 3, list and give a brief explanation of the ways the artist you like the most went about involving the viewer. Please identify at least 4 methods they use. This is where you go back, like I mentioned in the quiz, you need to list 5 ways of involving the viewer that you are interested in. Pull that from the 9 that are listed in chapter 1. And then here you're addressing specifically 4 of those 9 methods. Now, one, I do have this mentioned very specifically in the syllabus. We do have an AI policy for this class. And the AI policy is pretty straightforward. Um, I believe that AI can be a remarkable tool. I don't think that it is intrinsically evil. I think when we use AI instead of thinking, it can become evil. You know, if we use it to replace ourselves because we're too lazy, then it's no longer a tool. I'm thinking about a guy named John Talbot. I doubt any of you know of him except for the photographers in the class. John Talbot, in about 1860 or so, wrote a book called The Pencil of Nature, where he talked about photography. And photography at that time in 1860 had only been around for about 33 years. So it was still a really pretty brand new type of thing, but people were using it thinking it was a replacement for expensive artists, and it wasn't. It is something that is spectacular. It is awesome. But in order to use photography correctly, you have to be an artist. And a good example of that is, um, okay, who's the most photographed individual of the 19th century?
Michael Jackson.
That's 20th century.
Oh,
19th
no.
century. Oh, he was a big abolitionist. He escaped. They should make a movie about him, but he talked all over Europe. I can't remember his name. Frederick Douglass. Okay.
Frederick
He was
Douglass. Yep.
he was the most photographed celebrity of the 19th century. One of the things he said, the true miracle of photography is that anyone now has the capacity to control how other people will see them forever. And I thought that was absolutely beautiful. Anybody can have themselves portrayed in the same kind of way that used to only belong to heads of state in Europe. And as a direct result of that, in a lot of the states up north, one of the fastest growing cottage industries that Black Americans started were photograph studios because everybody got photographs of themselves. And one of the reasons why photography is still so popular, I believe, is because Frederick Douglass was such a proponent of it. But he never talked about it replacing artists. He was asking for people to become portrait artists using photography as the medium. You know, and a pretty brilliant guy. But yeah, John Talbot was pretty amazing. But he went through and talked about all these kinds of things, even predicting. If you read his book, it sounds like he's predicting things like Photoshop and X-rays and using film to track the movements of electrons. I mean, it in 1860, it's ridiculous. And then you move forward and you have people like Man Ray and Alexander Chichescu. No, not Chichescu. Sorry, Jelensky. And you get these Russian surrealist photographers, and you move forward, and you get digital photography and all this other stuff. It's amazing, but it's amazing when it's an art form, when it's a medium used by artists. When people take snapshots and think this is great, one of the reasons why you get one image that wins a photo contest out of hundreds of thousands is because everybody's taking snapshots without paying attention to what's going into the frame, and almost all of them suck. And when people pay attention, then it becomes good. And AI is going to be the same thing. It is another tool. It is not a thing. I think artificial intelligence is wrong is a bad name for it. It's not intelligence at all. It is not self-aware. It is not thinking things through. It appears to do that because of the decision-making programs that are used to help us in our generators. And and so when you do your essay, I do not care if you want to use AI to help you do the research, pull together your thoughts, and write an outline for you. That's fine. But when you submit your essay, it needs to be your own voice. And one of the big things for that is if you talk a certain way to me and in your essays all through the semester, and then at one spot you start using words that you have never used before, and you start using syllogisms you've never used before, then there's a pretty good chance that I'll call you on it and ask you to resubmit it in your own voice. I'll try hard not to say used AI. You're going to get a zero for this forever and ever. You're cheating. Because I don't know for sure, but I want it to be in your voice. It needs to be in your voice. When you submit stuff that is not your work, but you're submitting it as your work, regardless of who did the work, it's still cheating. And none of you guys are cheaters. You wouldn't have made it this far, and you wouldn't be professional artists if you were. So don't be lazy and go the AI route. I will tell you one last thing before I move on. The biggest indicator that I've seen over the years when people have used chat to write their essays is at the middle, it will say something along the lines of, I cannot give you an opinion about this art because I'm only a generator and I'm a creative word generator. If I was a human, I might be able to give an opinion. I see a phrase like that, and that's what really ticks me off because at the very least, read through it and rewrite it in your own words so it doesn't sound so blatantly. I can't think of the proper negative word, so it doesn't sound so blatantly wrong. I have developed a chat where I programmed in everything I've written that's been published, and it helps me do quite a bit of stuff. And then I have to go through it, rewrite it again, but um, it does a pretty good job. All right, so now, and that's because I spent a couple years putting it together. So, and the database it uses is my own language. And that's quite a bit different because most of the time the reason why it sounds a certain way is because it has an umbrella that it uses to decide the statistical formatting connections between words. So it's a statistical generator. It's not an intelligent machine. Sorry, yeah, you can tell that there's some things that bothered me about it. And if you don't like AI, that's fine. But I don't think I'll force anybody to use AI in this class. I do have AI assignments in other classes, and the only thing that disappoints me is when somebody says they don't want to use AI. That's fine. Give me an alternative to the assignment that still covers the parameters. And if you want to share your opinion with me, at least be a grown up enough to articulate it. Don't just say it's bad. Well, why is it bad? I don't know. It's just bad. That's what my kids did when they were 3 and stamped their foot. You guys don't need to do that. At least I don't care what your opinion is. As long as you can articulate it intelligently, then nobody, people can't assail your opinion by calling you a dummy. Okay, so here's the assignment. What I want you to do is, and I have some links here, there's some videos. I really like this website. I want you to look at this and just get some cool ideas. Um, so let's see, we're going to share this tab. This guy is Charles Young is so much fun. He makes these animations, but he does these tag board or poster board towns. They look like construction paper. And he makes all these little architectural structures and buildings. Some of them are pretty big. Like this one is about 4 feet tall. And but some of them are really tiny. Like each of these houses are about inch and a half tall to 2 inches. Go through and just look at the stuff that he's done because there's some really neat. He did a BMW commercial where it's all animated with his buildings. That was just a lot of fun to see. And right here, There are three different videos I refer you to. Again, I can't show you the videos because YouTube will make it so I can't post the class discussion on there because it ding it for copyright. But definitely watch these three videos for ideas. Because what you can do is find a simple pattern for making the house, print it out to the size that you want the house to be. And then, we're talking about a little bit smaller than volleyball size. And then make whatever changes you need to add texture and color and different things like that. Make it so that it's fun to photograph. By fun to photograph, I mean like on this, the guy could have person could have just painted the roof gray and done all that. But what they actually did is it looks like they got like a bolt out of somewhere and put that on top as a chimney. And this roof, it looks to me like it is like gray poster board that they folded so it looks like roof slats. And then instead of painting this red, they painted red paper and they put that on in vertical pieces to kind of mimic wood. And you can see that they made this structurally, it's pretty simple, but they made it with a lot of visual texture, so it's really interesting. Look at how they applied like sawdust and stuff like this in here, instead of just putting spraying color on. They did some really fascinating stuff with it. This is one of my favorite ones. This person, the poster board, they kind of painted so it looks like wood right here, and then they, wood boarded over the doors and windows. I don't know if you can tell, but right here they actually cut this circle out. They got a separate piece of paper for the crossbeam frame for the window, pasted that or glued that on the backside of that circle cutout, and then took tissue paper and glued that on the backside of that. So one of the pictures that they sent in, they had one of those battery powered tea light candles inside, and all the windows were glowing. They didn't glue on individual bricks. They found something like at Michael's or something like that. You can find little rollers that will have it's designed so you can roll the texture of bricks into clay, into polymer clay. And it looks like they used something like that to roll these bricks on to get all this kind of brick painted texture. But notice they weren't being really even about it, and that adds to it. And then they added this other stuff where the roof looks like little sticks and stuff like that. And then some of this is strings from a hot glue gun that they draped over it. And you can see that, and they glued like Spanish moss in some of the areas. They just did a great job making the house so it was actually interesting and fun to look at. And both of these are good examples of the same thing. They found some really interesting textured material. And I think this is actually just cardboard from a box where they pulled off one part that was over the corrugation, put the corrugation side so that the runnels ran sideways. And doing it this way, it almost looks like it's a rusted, with the paint that they put on, almost looks like it's rusted tin siding, which I think is really amazing. And this is a pretty simple design for a house, but before folding it up, they exaggerated some of the lines. They made the roof so it's paper with sticks on it, and the paper runs this way, and they just cut a bunch of what's it called, skewers, the same length from this peak down to here, and glued those underneath or they set that down on a flat surface and then put glue on this piece of paper that they put on the roof and put it over it so that it kind of draped down over if you can imagine this, draped down over the little skewers. And so when they pulled it off, and I think they did it on like saran wrap, when they pulled it off after it dried, it gave a really cool texture for the roof. And you can see they cut out little sticks right here for this part. Most of the texture here that you see is actually just, playing around with paint. But again, it's a lot of fun to look at it. I love this one too. The siding is a bunch of popsicle sticks. They painted popsicle sticks brown and cut them into half-inch sections and glued them on there for the roof. And these ones they painted white and glue on horizontally for this part and vertically for this part. And then again, tissue paper in the windows. And this is a relatively simple door, but it makes it fun to look at and makes it fun to photograph too. Same kind of thing. You see the peeling off one layer of the cardboard, so you just see the corrugation, and using that for the roof, so it looks like this the old style tin roofs, and then using like strips of cardboard that they painted blue for the siding of the house. And then this right here, they took some white paper and did accordion fold pleats on it that were about a quarter inch wide, and then cut it so that it was the width of the window. And I think you kind of see the accordion pleats right there. It makes for a really groovy looking visual texture. And here, this one, I thought this was fascinating because all their photos were actually in dark surroundings where most of the light comes through at the tea light inside, and they have tissue paper in the windows. So they found a pattern for like an Addams Family house style kind of thing. And then after they printed it out, they kind of changed the lines and stuff like that. So you get these really cool roof things that were not in the original one. So they used a pattern, but they started it as a beginning point. Or they used it as a beginning point. They did not use it straight. I don't Nobody can use a kit, nobody can use a pattern straight. I want you to change it. And that's what they did here, making all the windows just a little bit funky and off. And when they did their 5 photos, they did it in areas where they spray painted the house black, put the tissue paper windows in, and then found really dark places to photograph this. So all the 5 photographs they turned in were at night. And some of them are on surface like this that is reflective, so you see the reflection. Others aren't. And it was just really interesting way of doing it. And then this person, instead of using any sort of a printout for the internet or anything like that, they kind of designed their own trailer. And I love it. I think it's wonderful. And you can kind of tell that the roof of the trailer is popsicle sticks, but they made it so, and then the floor on the inside is popsicle sticks, and they made it so that they were able to bring their cell phone right up here and you could see inside. That was one of their photos. Just doing really fun stuff with this kind of thing. And I think that this is like a Pinewood Derby kind of uh, race car wheel. And then these are skewers that they had painted black to look like metal posts. So this is the kind of thing that I want you guys to do, to think about as you go into designing and building these houses. Spend some time on it and make it cool, make it fun, and think about these things: focal point, depth of field, and viewpoint when you take photos. And on one of these, you can use filters if you want. Use the paint style filters on your computer. But for each of these 5 photographs, and it will really help me when you submit this, label your 5 photos with these. I want a close up, a distance view, an unusual setting, and that could be whatever you want. Like up here, I think this is a really unusual setting. That's kind of fun. And let's see, this would be both a close up and an unusual setting. So I would probably I would definitely do something. If you're going to use this as a close up, find something else for the unusual view. If this is your unusual view, come in even closer for the close up. Then the unexpected lighting. And I think that this qualifies as that, with the light coming in from the inside of the house, and then you have the reflections on the reflective surface. That's pretty cool. And then a super creative view. You put your house on a barge floating down the Provo River or something, or your child dresses up as a kaiju and is attacking it, or what, it doesn't matter. Just something super creative and fun. Now, I will tell you right now, um, every year there's somebody, and it's not every section of the class. Every year, out of all the sections I teach, there's one person who does this, and it really irritates me, where they'll set the house up and they'll walk around the house and take 5 photos of it while they're walking around. What's the problem with doing that?
Do the pictures like come out awkward and blurry? I mean, but you don't really get much variety when they do that, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That's the main reason. There's no variety. You can see it's the same house, and they're just walking around it. So if I can tell that it's the same setting, you won't get points
Okay.
for that image. Each one needs to be a unique image, and that's why you have to do submit five. Now there were some people that will take like 20 photos and then do turn in the five best ones. And sometimes, that maybe they'll have like roommates or friends suggest different ways that they can photograph them. But like this last semester, somebody turned in, it was the same place setting because I could tell because, everything, all the grass around the house was the exact same and it was the same shadows that were cast and everything. But the faraway view and the close-up view, they had just walked up to get the close-up view. It was the exact same photo. And so I don't even know if they even moved themselves or just blew up that portion of the
Image.
that image. Thank you.
Hmm.
Now, one of the best ones though was last year for over Christmas. Uh, Somebody was well, it wasn't over Christmas, it was in September, but they were so excited for this project that they made a gingerbread house. Come out to find out later that this student at UVU is like one of the state champion gingerbread house designers and builders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they made a gingerbread house for their house, and their close up, they actually took it apart, put their camera inside and closed it and took a picture of the gingerbread house from inside the living room.
That's
And
actually
it was awesome. Yeah, it was incredibly cool. Made my stomach hurt just looking at it. But all the candy and sugar and everything. But boy, I would have loved to have had that. And so you people can be really creative. And what I'm saying is take the time to think it through and be creative.
I have a
Because
question.
yes.
Sorry. Um, would it be okay if we kind of made it like a dollhouse, like for the unexpected view, you could open it up and have something staged inside, or no?
Yeah, you can do pretty much whatever you want.
Okay.
Pay attention to the scale, and whatever you do, pay attention to the fact too that I expect that all of you are professional artists.
Yeah.
And so one of the worst ones I've seen is somebody took three pieces of paper and made basically a corner of a house where they had two pieces of paper going like this and one piece of paper on top, and said that was their house, and it sucked. And that I think that was the same class that produced that really cool little trailer where everything was textured and really cool blue house in the prairie, where everything was colored and textured. You know, use whatever texture you think would be interesting. People have gotten actually, dollhouse stuff from Dollar Tree or Michael's or Hobby Lobby and put it in to decorate after they built the house. People have done that. They've also glued this textural stuff like dead bark, old moss, stuff like that onto the house as well to add texture. Paint it however you want.
Okay.
One thing that might be interesting is after you build your house, you can get spray cans that have texture in it. There's a product that I believe is called granite text or something like that, where you can spray paint something with a pseudo granite texture, and it gives they come in different colors, but just get it. You could try something where you get something like that. You have an interesting texture that's on there, and then paint it completely different color.
Okay.
You know, there's so many different things that people can do. And I want you to think about that. And like I said, be creative. Okay, I'm going to do one last screen share, and then this is pretty much all I wanted to cover today. Um, Remember, actually, no, this is almost the last thing. Then I want to go back and talk about something else. For this module, you're going to do a discussion. And some of the discussions we have, you're basically just going to share the art that you made, and that's it. But also others, I want you to respond to other people. So on this one, you're going to pick three images or three other students' work, and you're going to write 45 words about it. At least this is the bare minimum, where you'll pick three of your fellow students, and you'll put a comment as a post on under their image, and say like 15 words how their thing involves the viewer, 15 words how they can how they kind of engage you in different ways with the house structure. And 15 words, um, on how varying the focal point, depth, and field of viewpoint in the pieces it was interesting to you. And these are kind of guidelines, but I want you to make sure that you respond with at least 45 words and think about these kinds of things. And I want to go back to the tools of artistic critique here and remind you of those really quick. Oh, and this right here is important. Do not use HEIC files. A lot of people will submit straight from their phones, and a lot of phones, and I think it's Android, will automatically submit HEIC files. My computer does not recognize HEIC files. It needs to be a JPEG or it needs to be in like a PDF or a document. So if I can't read the files, I'm just going to put a zero on there and say, please resubmit it as a JPEG or whatever. In order to get points, you'll need to go back and resubmit with the correct format of file. And if you're going to do a video file, there's three specific video files that I talk about as well. And we'll talk about that later. So if you get a zero, if it's because you got the HEIC files, you just go back, download the images to yourself, run them through one of the file translator programs that are free, and and you can even do that. Sometimes you can open up HEIC files in Paint and then save it as like a JPEG or something, and that works too. And then submit that. But I want to go to does this make sense, Alex? That where you're just responding to people?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And also the HEIC files come from iPhones.
iPhones, okay.
Yeah. But yeah,
So
I understand.
but it's not Android, it's iPhone.
Hmm.
Okay. So if you are going to submit from your phone, just make sure. I do think that when you submit, it does ask you what kind of format you want to put it in, and you can submit it as a different format, and if not, just send it to yourself and change the format.
So if people find that really hard, I find I just select the picture that I want. I screenshot it on my phone and then I crop it and then I submit it like that. So when you do a screenshot, that's an automatic JPEG versus
Okay.
actually taking a picture.
That is really good to know because I myself have not run into this problem, and I realize now it's because I screenshot and then that's what I and so I can change the border on it, and
Hmm.
that's what I submit. So that's why it's always JPEG. Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And be aware of this, but I want you guys to also go back to the tools of artistic critique, and I'll show you again where this is. So this is the tools of artistic critique, and if you go back into your module, this is the modules page or the home page, whichever. If you go up to course overview, scroll down to course overview, the tools of artistic critique are listed right here. And then also, if you go to applying the tool, I'm sorry, if you go to applying the tools of artistic critique, and this is one of the mini modules, you also have tools of artistic critique here. So I introduce it up here in the course overview, and then I give them a little bit more depth right here with an accompanying quiz as well that talks a little bit about it. And then the tools of artistic critique, you can use this instead of those three. Actually, you need to cover those three kind of things, but you could do it from the framework of the tools of artistic critique, where being aware of describing it, and this is relatively passionless, no imagination. You're just talking about what it is that you see. Analysis, where you use a little bit of your imagination to extrapolate how and why it is the way it is, or how it is the way it is. And then interpretation, this is where you use more of your imagination to talk about the rationale behind why you think it is. And then evaluation. Those are the four tools of artistic critique. And we'll go over them again with more depth next week. But be aware of those when you do go to do that discussion assignment. Have those four tools of artistic critique in the back of your head as you do this and think about it in those terms and in those words. Are they involving the viewer because the textures on the object set up kind of rhythms, or what kind of, or what are the visual traits that they're using to draw people in and um, attracting different responses? I would really want you to familiarize yourself with the tools of artistic critique. Like I said, we'll talk more about it next week, but that is really something that's important because that's going to be with you for the rest of your artistic um, careers, hopefully. I think that they're absolutely vital. And one thing that I like about Feldman's model of critique, which is what those four tools are, is they can be adapted to absolutely any situation, any job situation, any living situation, anything you encounter. Like my younger brother is a contract computer systems engineer, and he uses those four tools to identify problems, find out how the stakeholders want him to fix them and what their priorities are for the fix. And he will use Feldman's model of critique all the way through. And when he had a stroke a couple years ago and lost about a third of his vocabulary, which nobody could notice because he has a really huge vocabulary. He's like, he makes me look like I have social skills. That's how much of a nerd he is. But the people that employed him said, "Hey, we'd rather have you brain damaged after a stroke than any ordinary person because you still are able to do this." And a big part of it is that Feldman's model of critique is so ingrained in everything that he does. It's just a really solid way of addressing issues and solving problems. Anyway, so that's enough of my evangelicalism about Feldman's model. So that's all I wanted to cover today. Do you have any questions, Alex, or anything that I can uh, clear up?
No, I think you pretty much hit everything on the nail for me. So thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, guys, thank you very much. I know I'm going to be back in town on the night next Thursday, so we might not have class until next Thursday. As soon as I can find out where I'm going to have internet reception, I will set that up, and it maybe we'll do a meeting on Tuesday again. But if that's the case, I should know at least a day ahead of time, and I'll tell everybody about it. So, but thank you very much for listening in. I hope that helps. What I am looking forward to is next week we're going to look at what people have done on their houses and everything. We'll go through and I'll critique each one with Feldman's model of critique. When I critique is referencing the word critical, which means intent or with purpose. It does not mean hurtful. And so when I critique, I'm not looking for ways to tell you that you screwed up and you need to do better. I am looking for how this fits the assignment description or doesn't.
Okay.
When I do the critique, that's what I'm looking for. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm being a jerk to them. I I sometimes am a jerk, but I'm not trying to be a jerk when I do the critique thing. And when you do your own critiques in this class, you're using Feldman's model to closely examine something, not to tell somebody how they screwed up.
Yeah.
So just something to be really aware of as we move forward in this class. All
Okay.
right, guys, I will see you next week and have a good weekend, and we'll look forward to talking to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.